Hello, we're glad that you're here to learn about control flow. In this demo, we'll cover using if statements in UiPath Studio. Let's begin. The execution of activities inside workflows usually follows a top-to-bottom approach. That is, in the order of their appearance, or according to the arrows in the flowchart. Control flow activities, such as decision-making, looping, and branching activities, however, can interrupt this flow of execution by allowing us to conditionally execute certain activity blocks. This enhances the versatility and complexity of our automations, allowing us to create workflows that can handle a variety of different scenarios. In this demo, we'll learn how to use the if activity when working with sequences. We'll also learn how to use the flow decision activity, which is the equivalent of the if activity when used in flowcharts, and the if operator in VB. They enable our workflow to take one of the two courses of action, depending on whether a specified condition is met or not. For this demonstration, consider the following business scenario. For reporting purposes, we need to find out if the reporting year is a leap year or not. Let's start with the logic. A year is a leap year if it meets the following conditions. The year is evenly divisible by 4. If the year is evenly divisible by 100, it is not a leap year unless the year is also evenly divisible by 400. As for the workflow design, we'll build a simple project that asks the user to input a year. It then checks if the conditions are met and prints a message to indicate if it is a leap year or not. We encourage you to build along with this demo. Additionally, you'll find the input files used in the demo after this video. Let's see how we can use an if activity in a sequence workflow. We'll add a sequence. Name it leap year using if. And then add an annotation for it. Next, we'll add an input dialog activity that we'll use to get the year from the user. And name it input year. Let's fill in the input properties for the activity. Now let's create an int32 variable and add it to the result field of the input dialog. Next, let's add an if activity to our workflow. Let's name it if statement for checking leap year. This activity contains 3 sections: condition, then, and else. The condition field must contain a Boolean expression based on which either the then section or the else section is executed. Let's enter the expression in the condition field. This is the VB.NET expression used to set the conditions. In UiPath workflows, we use VB.NET syntax. Check the link below the video for more information regarding expressions in VB.NET. Remember the conditions we've mentioned earlier? A leap year is evenly divisible by 4, but if it is evenly divisible by 100, it also needs to be divisible by 400. Now that we've entered the expression in the condition field of the if activity, we'll add 2 message box activities. One on the then branch, named print result true, with the message this year is a leap year. And another one on the else branch, named print result false, with the message this year is not a leap year. Let's save the workflow, run it, and test it with a few values. That looks good. For the next step, let's develop a workflow with the same logic, but instead of a sequence, we'll use a flowchart. We'll click New Flowchart in the ribbon menu. We'll name it Leap Year Flowchart. And add an annotation as well. Let's add an input dialog activity and connect it to the Start node. This will make it the first activity to run in the workflow. Rename it and fill in the input properties for the activity. Now let's define the variable year of type int32. Next, we'll add a flow decision activity and connect the input dialog activity to it. We'll enter the same expression as in the previous workflow in the condition field. Now let's add the two message boxes. One with the message, "This year is a leap year." Connect it with the true branch of the flow decision. The other with the message, "This year is not a leap year." Connect it with the false branch of the flow decision. It's time to save and run the workflow and see what we've got. This looks good. We've just solved the same business scenario using the same logic, but with two types of workflows. Since sequences have a simple, linear representation, they're best suited for simple scenarios. A scenario that flows from top to bottom, where activities follow each other. In contrast, flowcharts are best suited for showcasing important decision points within a process. A sequence would do just fine to solve this scenario. Now that we've seen how to use the if and the flow decision activities, there's one more tip that we want to share. The if operator in VB can be very useful for minor local conditions or data computing, and it sometimes can reduce a whole block to a single activity. It's important to note that the if operator should not be used for complex or multi-step conditions. Let's create a new sequence workflow and use the if operator in VB to solve the same business case. We'll name it Leap Year Sequence and add an annotation. We'll add the input dialog activity as we did earlier. Name it Input Year. Fill in the input properties of the activity and create the variable year of type int32. Next, we'll add an assign activity. Rename it and add an annotation. Create a new variable, message, of type string. Now we'll enter the message variable in the to field and then add the expression used with the VB if in the Value field. It follows the syntax if, brackets, condition, comma, value if true, comma, value if false. The condition is to check if the year is evenly divisible by 4, but if it's evenly divisible by 100, it also must be divisible by 400. The value, if true, returns this year is a leap year. The value, if false, returns this year is not a leap year. Finally, let's add a message box activity. And enter the message variable in the text property. Let's save it and run it again. Perfect, it works as expected. As a short recap, we learned to use the if statements in sequence. We also saw the flow decision activity used in flowcharts and the if operator in VB. For more practice on this topic, check the performance of the if activity by modifying the conditions and observing the outcome, experimenting with different values and input data. That was all for this demo. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.